My name is Emma and I'm 26 years old, a freelance graphic designer in Seattle struggling to make it on my own. I was working late in my tiny studio apartment when my phone lit up with a message that would change everything. It was from my mom. "We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how strong you really are." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't breathe. My own mother, the woman who raised me, who I thought loved me despite our recent conflicts, had just told me I was homeless. The casual cruelty of it, the way she seemed to be challenging me, made my hands shake as I read it again and again. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't really about that text message. It's about something much deeper. A web of lies, manipulation, and betrayal that had been years in the making. Growing up, I was my father's daughter through and through. Michael taught me everything about design, creativity, and following your passion. He owned a small but successful advertising agency, and some of my happiest childhood memories were spent in his office, watching him work with clients, learning about typography and color theory. He always told me I had a gift, that I could make a real difference in the world through creative work. When I was 14, everything changed. Dad was diagnosed with aggressive lung cancer, and within 6 months, he was gone. The loss devastated both my mother, Sarah, and me. We were lost without him emotionally, financially, and in every way that mattered. Mom had always been a stay-at-home mother, and suddenly she was faced with managing Dad's business affairs. While grieving, that's when Vincent appeared in our lives. He was a business consultant who specialized in helping families navigate the sale of small companies. On the surface, he seemed like our savior, charming, knowledgeable, and genuinely concerned about our well-being. Within a year, Mom and Vincent were married. I was too young and too grief-stricken to see the warning signs. Vincent moved us from our cozy family home to his impressive house in the suburbs. Suddenly we had everything: luxury cars, expensive clothes, private school for me. Mom quit the part-time job she'd taken after Dad died because Vincent insisted she didn't need to work. When I turned 16, Vincent had a son, my half-brother Tyler. The dynamic in our house shifted completely. Tyler became the center of attention, the golden child who could do no wrong. Vincent made it clear that Tyler was his heir, his legacy, while I was just a burden he'd inherited through marriage. The problems really started when I chose to major in graphic design in college. Vincent was furious. He'd been pushing me toward business or law, something practical that would guarantee financial success. Every conversation became an argument about my impractical career choice. "Emma, you need to think about your future," Mom would say, always backing Vincent. "Art is a nice hobby, but you need something stable." But I knew what made me happy. I knew what Dad would have wanted for me. Despite their objections, I graduated with my design degree and immediately started looking for work in the city. That's when I discovered something that changed everything. While helping Mom organize some old paperwork, I found documents related to Dad's business. The agency hadn't been sold to a stranger, as I'd been told. Vincent had bought it himself for a fraction of its actual value. Worse, there were documents showing that Dad had set up a trust fund for me from his life insurance, money that was supposed to mature when I turned 25. When I asked Mom about it, her reaction was evasive and defensive. That money was needed for family expenses, she said. Vincent made some investments that didn't work out. "These things happen, Emma. But it was Dad's money for me," I protested. "How could you just give it away?" "Vincent knows about finances. Your father, God rest his soul, wasn't always practical about money. We did what we thought was best." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the mother I remembered. She was someone else entirely, someone who would take what my father had lovingly set aside for me and hand it over to her new husband without a second thought. The confrontation that followed was explosive. I accused Vincent of manipulating Mom and stealing from our family. He threatened to sue me for slander. Mom stood by his side through it all, choosing him over me yet again. "If you can't respect this family and what Vincent has done for us, maybe you should leave," she said. Coldly. So I did. I found a tiny apartment in Seattle and started building my life from scratch. It was hard. The rent was expensive, freelance work was unpredictable, and I was essentially estranged from my family. But for the first time in years, I could breathe freely. I threw myself into my work, slowly building a client base and reputation. It was a struggle, but I was proud of what I was accomplishing on my own. I rarely spoke to Mom, and when I did, our conversations were strained and brief. That's what made the text message so shocking. Despite our problems, I never thought my own mother would be so cruel. I tried calling her immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with Vincent's phone. Even the house line was disconnected. I spent the next 2 days in a daze, staying with a friend because I was too upset to be alone. Then, 3 days after the message, I got a call from David Martinez, the family lawyer who had handled Dad's estate. His voice was urgent and concerned. "Emma, I need to see you immediately. There's been a development regarding your stepfather that you need to know about." I met him at his office the next morning, my stomach churning with anxiety. "Emma," David said carefully, "Vincent has been arrested. The FBI has been investigating him for financial fraud, and they've uncovered evidence of systematic theft from multiple clients, including your father's estate." The world seemed to tilt. "What do you mean?" "Vincent has been running an elaborate scheme for years. He would target recently widowed women, offer to help them with their deceased husband's business affairs, then gradually steal their assets through fraudulent investments and shell companies. Your mother was one of his victims, but so were at least a dozen other women." I sat in stunned silence as David continued. "The investigation was triggered by another victim who came forward 6 months ago. When the FBI looked into Vincent's business practices, they discovered the pattern. Your father's company, your trust fund, it was all part of the scheme." "What about Mom?" I managed to ask. "She's not been charged with anything. From what I can gather, she was as much a victim as anyone." "The text message you received?" "Vincent sent it from her phone without her knowledge. She only found out about it when the FBI showed her the message history during questioning. The relief I felt was overwhelming, followed immediately by guilt. While I'd been angry at my mother, she'd been trapped in an abusive relationship with a man who was systematically destroying her life. The FBI would like to speak with you," David continued. "Your testimony about what happened to your father's business could be crucial to their case." Over the next few weeks, I learned the full extent of Vincent's crimes. He had stolen over $3 million from various victims. My father's company and trust fund were just the beginning. He had been using that money to fund his lavish lifestyle and further investments in his schemes. The most heartbreaking part was learning how he had manipulated Mom. Financial experts testified that he had isolated her from friends and family, made her financially dependent on him, and gradually eroded her self-confidence until she couldn't make decisions without his approval. When I finally saw Mom again, she was staying with her sister in Portland, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen her. "Emma," she whispered when she saw me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I failed you. I failed your father's memory. I let that man convince me that you were the problem, that your dreams were foolish, that I had to choose between you and family stability." For the first time in years, I saw my real mother, not the woman Vincent had molded her into, but the person who had raised me with love and support before grief made her vulnerable. "I never sent that text message," she said. "Vincent took my phone. He said he was checking something, but he was cutting off any chance of reconciliation between us. He wanted to isolate me completely." The healing process was slow. We attended therapy together, working through years of hurt and misunderstanding. Mom had to rebuild her entire sense of self after years of being controlled and manipulated. I had to learn to trust her again after feeling abandoned and betrayed. Vincent's trial was a media sensation. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Not just financial records, but testimonies from multiple victims about his pattern of manipulation and control. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. During the proceedings, investigators were able to recover some of the stolen assets. Mom got back a portion of what Vincent had taken from her, and I received what remained of Dad's trust fund, not the full amount, but enough to help me finally buy a small condo and establish some financial security. More importantly, I got my mother back. Tyler, who was only 5 when Vincent was arrested, came to live with us. Mom moved to Seattle to be closer to me, and slowly, we rebuilt our family. It wasn't the same as before. We'd all been changed too much for that, but it was real and honest in a way it hadn't been for years. 6 months after Vincent's conviction, I had my first major gallery showing. It was a series called Reconstructed Pieces that explored themes of betrayal, healing, and rebuilding trust. Mom and Tyler were there, proudly watching as people admired my work. "Your father would be so proud," Mom whispered as we stood together. Watching visitors examine my paintings. He'd be proud of you too, I replied, for finding your way back to yourself. That cruel text message that had seemed like the ultimate betrayal had actually been the catalyst for uncovering the truth. Vincent's attempt to isolate us from each other had backfired, ultimately leading to his downfall and our reunion. I learned that home isn't a building with locks that can be changed. It's not about physical security or material possessions. Home is about the people who truly love you, who support your dreams, who stand by you through difficult times. It's about honesty, trust, and the courage to face hard truths together. Today, 3 years later, I run a successful design studio. Mom has returned to school to become a counselor, hoping to help other women who've been victims of financial abuse. Tyler is thriving in his new school and showing signs of inherited artistic talent. Sometimes I think about that night when I received the message that seemed to destroy everything. How desperate and alone I felt. How certain I was that I'd lost my family forever. I couldn't have imagined then that this moment of deepest betrayal would actually be the beginning of our healing. Vincent is still in prison and will be for many years to come. He tried to contact Mom a few times initially, alternating between threats and fake apologies, but she's maintained firm boundaries with the support of her therapist and the legal system. The most important lesson I've learned is that people can change, but only if they truly want to. My mother's transformation wasn't magic, it was the result of hard work, therapy, and a commitment to facing uncomfortable truths about herself and her choices. She had to acknowledge the harm that had been done, take responsibility for her part in it, and consistently demonstrate through actions that she was different. Forgiveness, I discovered, isn't a single moment of decision. It's a daily choice. To move forward together, to build something new from the ashes of what was broken. It requires both parties to be honest, to set healthy boundaries, and to commit to doing better. That text message that once seemed to signal the end of our relationship actually marked the beginning of a new chapter, one built on truth, mutual respect, and genuine love, rather than manipulation and control. Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives are actually the catalyst for our greatest growth and healing. In the end, Vincent's cruelty couldn't destroy what really mattered. Love, when it's real, finds a way to survive even the deepest betrayals. And home, true home, is something we carry within us and create through our authentic connections with others.